This next one. This next one is rough. Okay. Anyone in the audience happen to be a land title attorney? No? Okay. I guess we're out of luck in one sense, because it would be nice to have someone. On the other hand, it frees me up because maybe you won't know if I'm saying anything wrong. This one is the most difficult one to write about as Paul. It is looking at a complex system, and it has another solution for it. It's not a minor tweak, it's sort of redoing the system. So the topic is tax sales, as opposed to sales tax, right? Sales tax, we know, we understand that. You go and you buy something and you get a percent and you have to pay it. These are tax sales. So if the owner or owners of a property have unpaid property tax, then under the current system, if you wait the prescribed period, then the government that they owe the money to can put that sale up, that property up for auction, and then they sell that property. And at that point, the original owner or owners can come back, and they'd have 3 years to essentially buy their property back for the auction price plus penalties and interest. So you can buy your property at auction, but you don't have clean title to it. Is essentially one of the issues. But eventually, if you wait enough, you have your property, and then you can put it back into commerce. And that's basically how the current system works. 2 problems with the current system. And it's a little more complicated now. I'm going to say, depending on how the auction goes, you not necessarily buy the entire property. You buy a percentage of the property if you pay less than what the property is worth. And that goes back to agricultural times, when you could actually easily divvy up. Someone owned 100 acres and like, oh, well, it's worth $100,000, you owe $10,000, well, I can just give you 10% of my acres, that kind of thing. It's a little harder when it's a house or a building that you own a percentage of it, but that's still part of the current system. Okay, 2 issues. One is the current system is very difficult if you have multiple owners. And this can frequently be the case with abandoned property, because you might have a family that owned the property, and then both of the owners die, and so it would pass to their kids, or their grandkids, or their second cousins. And so you might have, in some cases, 10, 12, dozens of owners of a property, particularly if it's been abandoned for a long time. Which, particularly after Katrina, people found out how difficult this is to try and put property back into commerce, because you had wiped out property, wasn't being used for anything, and you were trying to put it back. And if you do it as part of the process, if you leave out any of these owners in terms of notifying that the property is going to be up for auction, then the whole thing is subject to risk of being nullified, the whole process. So that's one of the issues this tries to deal with the process. The second issue is, there was a Minnesota case. It says, okay, if you're going to take someone's property, the government can't unduly benefit from it. Another way to put it is, I'll give you an example. Say the property is worth $100,000, and there's $30,000 worth of debt on it. So that includes penalties and interest. So it goes to sale, someone buys it for the $30,000. So a person lost their house, it's worth $100,000 for $30,000 worth of debt. And then when the owner, the new owner sells it, they have a $100,000 house. Essentially, the original owner had a $70,000 taking, in a sense. They took more than the government was allowed to take. And so they said that was unconstitutional. Says you can take the $30,000. Yeah, they owed you that money. You can't take the whole house just because they owed you something less than the house. Now people will say that doesn't apply to Minnesota. We have a slightly different system. and although people say our current system has a lot of problems. So what was the proposal to move to? So the current system is a house sale or a property sale system. You get ownership of the property if there's a debt. If there's a debt, you can put the house up for sale, someone buys that property. The new system is a lien system, where someone is not buying your property at auction, they're buying a debt on your house. So instead of being the whole $100,000 house that's up for sale or for auction, it's the $30,000 in debt. Or really it's the $20,000, but eventually be worth $30,000 in penalties and interest. So we essentially just auction off that portion of the property that's unpaid, the unpaid debt, so they amount. So now someone now is owed $30,000. The original owner can come back and buy that at any point and say, okay, look, I owed the government $20,000 with penalties and interest, and I waited a couple of months, maybe 2-3 years. So now I owe you $30,000. Here's the $30,000. I've cleared my debt, and then it's done. If they don't do that, then in 3 years or more, the owner of the debt can force you into foreclosure and say, okay, we're going to force you to sell your property. It's going to be like a mortgage, right? If you don't pay your mortgage, the mortgage company can force you into foreclosure. And then they sell the property. And then here's what happens. Whatever money they get, whoever does the auction, usually a sheriff, gets some administrative fee. Then the next amount of money that goes to pay off the lien holder. So that money gets paid off. And if there's any other liens, like say, the county or the parish has to pay off your grass cutting lien or something like that, those get paid off, and then any money left will go to the original property owner. So they still have some ability to reclaim some of the equity in that house. Not all of the money went to go pay for their debt, but is in excess of their debt. All right, that's just explaining the system. So we move from you lose your whole house and it gets auctioned off process. Someone gets to auction off and then buy your house, versus we're going to auction off the debt. Now the equivalent, you still might lose your house, but if the house goes up for sale, you still get some of the equity if there's anything left after the debt is paid. So it's a very different system. The second system is a little bit more protective of the original owners, in the sense that they get some of their money back if more than the amount to pay off the debt comes out of the house sale. So it's a little more protective that way. There are arguments between lots of different title attorneys that say, okay, is this faster or slower? Some of the people against it were saying, okay, look, this is actually going to take a little bit longer. It's a new system. You have to wait and see. People say, well, it might be a little bit slower, but I don't know that that's true, because there are a lot of things that can really slow you down, particularly in the notification phase of the current system. So you might have to do it all again if you have faulty notification. The second question would be, all right, what's better for redeveloping property if you have a lot of abandoned property? And again, there's people differ. Some people say, well, look, because it might be slower, it might actually, moving to the system might put people off from doing this. Plus, let's be honest, the current system might actually be a benefit to people who are going to buy it, because not only do they get to pay their debt off how much they auction the price for, they might get a whole house out of it depending on how they auction that. Although that might be unconstitutional. But some of the people say, well, look, it's going to be a different type of people that come in, because some people might come in, and if it's a cleaner process, they'll be more likely to put their money into it, because it's going to be cleaner and a little more standard. You don't have as much legal risk when you go and buy someone's house. And so in that case, it might be more attractive to investors. I can't tell you which way it is. I'm just telling you there are arguments on both sides. And whether it makes the Land Title Association, the people who brought the bill, because they thought this was a better process, and they were a little worried about the constitutional challenge if the Supreme Court ever takes it and makes it a national final. So, all right. That is one of the more complicated ones I've ever gone through. Hopefully, have elucidated. It's essentially changing it from where you buy someone's house and the house has to go up for sale, was where you buy someone's debt, and then you can force them to sell their house to pay off that debt, but any leftover money, they get to keep. All right.
Where do the assessors stand? I know you talked about the land group, but where do the assessors stand on the number 4?
So where did the assessors stand on the Fourth Amendment, which is about the tax sales? I don't know. I didn't see any assessors testify in the first Senate committee meeting. And actually, the people that testified against it they were like former land title folks or people that ran auctions. I didn't see any assessors one way or another. I'm not saying that some parts of one of the committees, especially when they got to the House, they didn't have some testify, but I think most of those people understand, most of the red cards kind of went away as this moved through the process from the people that understood it. But I don't think assessors had an opinion one way or another. I might be wrong about that, but I didn't see it.